So I'm cutting the hole to the Krasnogorsk and I protected the little. You can see I put some paper towel here to prevent the aluminum pieces when drilling and cutting body, so I don't want those to go all around inside the camera body, so I'm preventing them from spreading out like this. And you can see I covered the both holes, the threaded holes, with tape to prevent getting dust inside those. So first I drilled the 4mm, I think it was 3mm hole, then 5mm and 7mm, and finally a 9mm hole, 9mm or 8mm, and then 9mm is so large that it breaks the edge actually. But then I used just a tiny handsaw with small blade and saw the edges off. And then I'm using a file to smoothen this, and then testing with the motor. And I decided that I will actually use the 4-speed motor because to find the position, because it has the same mounting that's intentional on my ACL motors, and these universal motors have exactly the same mounting. The thickness of the motor body may differ, and sometimes the axle diameter may differ, but the mounting system with the 4 bolts, that's the same. So I'm using the 4-speed motor to find the correct position, because the position is the same for a 10-speed. You can see I made tiny cutouts to this. That didn't work perfectly, but the motor is covering it fully, so it doesn't. So, but the 10-speed motor has these bolt heads on the motor body, which are protruding just a tiny bit, couple of millimeters. So I needed to make these reliefs to allow using 10-speed with this. This is meant for 4-speed motors, but it does work with 10-speed, making these cutouts. So now I'm finishing these edges with the file and then testing with the 4-speed and the one axle which has the axle end which needs to be driven with motor coupling I made. So I'm finishing these edges and then removing all the padding and stuff and most of the aluminum pieces and dust which I can. Then I'm testing with the motor mounted, actually motor bolted here first, so that the axle is at correct position, and then when axle is at correct position, applying the coupling there, and then testing with the axle and the coupling how this blade sits when the motor's axle is exactly at correct position, and then I can mark the first holes for the mounting screws for this blade. I need the exact axle position, so I'm finishing these edges and removing all the covering stuff, and then doing the next step with the 4-speed motor. I don't have the 10-speed fully assembled yet. I have it halfway assembled, but I have my test 4-speed motor, so I'm just finding the correct blade position with that. And after that I will have this modification pretty much done, and then I can start reassembling the camera and finish the 10-speed motor, so I'm saving some time by using the 4-speed, because I can finish the camera body installation. Yeah, so finishing the edges and then testing. And if this cutout is not deep enough, there should be 2.5 millimeter approximately extra, but if not, then cutting a tiny bit more and then finishing again. So finishing the edges and then testing. So I have the 4-speed motor mounted to the plate with all 4 screws, and I have the separate axle adapter here. I don't mount it to the 4-speed motor. Let's check carefully. So this has the center hole, which is smaller than the axle, and the center hole fits to the round part, the end of this. So this I designed it so that the center hole fits to the round part, and then the cutout fits to that diagonal part. So I can, and the Chinese managed to machine this pretty well, but I don't have 3 hands, so I'm trying to show you. So it fits there like a glove. Find the correct position there. So I can just fit it there like that. So that is the, let's see. Now we can see the axle fitting, but depends on the motor type where this adapter actually sits. So sometimes you need to make the whole cutout on the camera body large enough to this adapter to fit through. So we can see that there is, you would need to go a tiny bit more there, but I measured the hole placement pretty well. So you can see that this was the first try actually. But when the adapter is fit snugly there, you can see where the axle actually will sit. So this hole can be made tiny bit larger, but we can see the position of it already. So now, and looking inside the adapter, you can see all the screw heads. So taking this tiny bit out so that the axle can be fit there, and then if I can do this one hand, I don't know really. So let's see. Light, of course. Light. So you can see like this. Let's see if something is not fitting, but I will need both hands and stop the video, but this is how you can find the exact place for the motor, but I need to get the motor axle or forward, so something is restricting it, this one. No, I will check and make another video. So here it is. It was actually the motor axle, because this is my test motor and it's been used on so many different cameras that the motor axle is scratched. So because these adapters are made with 1/50th of a millimeter or 100th of a millimeter accuracy, then if the axle has some tiny dent or scratch, it can prevent this. To be installed, then you need to check it, but it doesn't apply to new motors. It's only those which have been removed multiple times and the axle adapter taken off and put back again and changed and so on. So, but now let's see. Now you can see the approximate position of the plate, and let's check with these pins because they are neat. So if the camera works same way than my cameras and this camera, which is not mine. This is customer's camera, not my own. So now you can again take advantage of these pinholes. So apply a pin to the topmost hole, and then you should get this plate straight without measuring anything else. And it seems to work pretty well. So now we will rotate the axle manually. See the position. It does work and it doesn't sound horrible, it doesn't sound like anything. So this is the correct position, approximate position. It can change by 1/10 of a millimeter or 1/5 of a millimeter still. So it's not the super accurate position, but it's very close to the final one. So now you can mark. And about the mounting hose, you can apply a 4mm or even sometimes 5mm bolt here. Or you can possibly drill this to 4mm. The 4mm bolt here, this is meant for 3mm. And 3mm is enough if your bolt is good quality and proper steel and not some Chinesium horrible stuff. And these are 3. Everything else is 3. You can apply 4mm here. 4mm should work here if you drill this hole larger and you tap the hole on the camera body. But if applying a nut on the other side, then the nut may not fit inside the camera body. If it's 4mm on this position, it does fit. So I am marking probably the one closer to the edge, and always check what is on the other side. So I check this. If using this hole, the nut should fit, but I'm not sure. But basically, this or this hole, I'm using this for now and this. And I can already drill this if I will use the bolt and nut method, which I am going to use 3mm stainless bolt and nut on the other side. 3mm hole, 3mm hole. It's one that I said this 3mm. So Krasnogorsk 1 and 2 are gray, but this one is black, so it's difficult to mark with pencil. I'm just going to puncture a hole there, but I need so much precision that I'm not recording that. I need both hands and need to concentrate fully. So 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 holes, drilling and then checking with the blade, and then I can actually start to fine tune the position after that. Fully mount this axle there and then fine tune the position. And at this stage I will mention that if you make this hole large enough for the adapter to fit through, then it's possible to use this two different ways. So you can use it mounted fully all the way, or so that this is quite, the edge of the adapter is about here, and then filing this axle end and the adapter end wedge shaped. That way the placement of the motor is not that critical for the sound and vibration, because there's 1/20 millimeter or so air gap between the adapter and the axle. But if it's mounted like this, then it fits very snugly, and if there's any deviation, then you can hear it on the sound, and if you ignore if there's deviation and it generates vibration and extra friction, and you ignore that for too long, then you will cause extra wear on these bearings of this axle. So there's pros and cons, but on this camera I will cut this hole so that the adapter fits fully through, so to make it possible to use either way with this, so that it doesn't need to be modified any further. Now I drop the pin again, but the pin trick is very easy way to find out to get this upright. That's why I added the row of pinholes here. It's specifically for finding the correct position for those. And you can see there's metal dust there, so it can't be avoided, and that is why I wanted to remove the movement, and I also decided to remove the viewfinder prism, the angle prism assembly here, even when I need to calibrate it again when mounting it. But it's safer to drill these holes, and another benefit is that it can be cleaned, because I noticed there had been some fungus issue on the past, and the prism was dirty anyway, so I will want to clean it anyway for the customer. So we'll do that, but I need both hands and extra precision to mark the puncture holes for this. To drill it holes, so we'll stop the recording and we'll probably show you when this is actually finished drilling. So yes, next part of the video then. And now I mark the holes. I don't know if you can see. Let's see. So if I can keep the light, yeah. So I added it to a tiny puncture mark on the center of the hole, and then that is used to center the drill bit. First smaller bit which is easier to center, and then the final one after that. And remember that there is one bolt hole underneath which is needed. The bottommost one is very important, but it is necessary to drill these holes first, because you need to, when marking this hole position, you will need to remove the motor, and you don't have the reference point for it without first having these holes and mounting the plate in place and then removing the motor after that. So that's the trick. So first marking those holes which are not covered by the motor, then drilling those and bolting this plate in place with those and then checking that the axle turns freely, then removing the motor, and then you can see the rest of the holes, including the bottom one, which you want to drill. The bottom one is needed. You can decide with the other holes if you want to drill those or not. Can be drilled, not mandatory, but it may help with the end result. So now I need to drill those first. So protecting the camera body, removing this plate assembly, and there is a trick, of course. Everything has a trick. So you can see it has the cutout. So angle the cutout so that it points outwards, and then you can just pull a tiny bit up and then tilt to the side, and then this can be removed without pulling the axle out all the way. You just need to pull it a millimeter or two and then tilt what this need to be at correct position. So not at this position, but the cutout pointing outwards, and then you can just tiny bit upwards and then tilt a little and pull out the axle. So it works like that. So I will make this a tiny bit. Actually, it actually helps taking the motor out if this is large enough for the adapter to fit through. So it is recommended for all cameras. It is not absolutely mandatory, but I recommend it because it makes stuff much easier. So drilling the 3 holes, you can see the tiny marks. 1, the other one 2, then 3, and that is just enough to center the drill bit. When using a small drill bit, it centers it enough that you can drill the exact position. And then when you have the small hole, then you will use the larger drill bit, which is the final diameter. So first with the smallest one you can use just to get the hole to exact position, and don't start with the, if you need 4mm hole, don't start with 4mm drill bit. Start with much smaller one to get the hole to the guide hole to the right position, and after that you will use the larger one. And sometimes, if for example needing a 5mm hole, one could start with, for example, 2.5mm drill bit. I think this should be it. 2.5mm, and then drilling with something like 4.5mm, and then 7 or 8 or something like that. So first the guide hole, and then larger guide hole, and then the final one. With 3mm hole, one could start with 2mm, and then with the 3. So making this a little bit wider, and then the 3 holes, and then checking again. So now I have 3 of these screws mounted. I drilled the holes and mounted them, and tightened them a little bit to hold the plate in place. So I still have the actual adapter connected. And now it's the time to drill the rest of the holes. So here's the backmost screw, and these are temporary screws, so I can replace them later if needed. correctly. Because these are just to hold the plate in place so that I can remove the motor. The motor was for reference, for placement, but I have these 3 screws holding the plate in place, and now I can remove the motor temporarily. So I took the motor off now. And because the plate is now temporarily fixed to the camera body, the placement is so close to the correct that I can drill this hole, so marking like the previous ones and drilling without this plate. So that's because of temporary fixing. I still need to remove these screws, these for just to hold the plate in place long enough that I can drill the rest of the, mark the rest of the holes. I can just mark them all and then drill those which are needed or not. One needed. It would be ideal to have one here, but not mandatory. This is absolutely needed. This is not. This is absolutely needed, but these are more challenging because you can add the nut on the other side because the gear assembly is on exactly on the other side. So I like to leave these out. But this one, maybe this or this or this. Let's see. Some of those, but 1, 2, 3, 4 needed, and then you can add extra ones as you like. Not all of them, because the idea is that if you mess up some of the holes, you have extra ones, extra possibilities here. So you don't need all of these. Only if you, for example, mess up this hole really badly, then you can use the next one. But uppermost needed, one on the center. So one around here, and this is needed. This is very important. You can use these if you want, but I normally don't use them. Maybe I could use one of them just to show you how it works, but yeah. I think this one was easier. So, marking the rest of the hole positions, then taking the plate out, and then drilling those which I want to drill for now. So I decided to mark the extra holes. So this was absolutely mandatory. You have to drill this one. It's not extra hole. So this one is mandatory. This one is mandatory. This one is mandatory. And you will need one on this area. One of these 3. Ideally either this or this. So let's see. I already have this, so I decided to mark this and this. So I have 2 bolts on the top side, then one here to hold this more flatter if needed, then this mandatory screw, then the bottom screw which is mandatory. And then I decided to mark this one, just to show how it works and to make it even flatter. And then this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws. That's more than enough. 4 screws is enough to hold this, but more can be better. But the main thing is this needs to be flat against the camera side. So if adding extra screws makes it more difficult to get this neatly flat against the camera, then it might be sometimes worse result to add more screws, but it kind of depends from so many things that it can be known really. So you can mark these holes and you don't need to drill those if you don't want. So anyway, just 4 mandatory screws, and then you can add some extra ones if you want. But now I have those marked, so I can take this plate off for the final drilling of the camera body. And after that final drilling, it is possible to clean all the metal dust and chips, mess from the camera, and then start to assemble this thing finally. So to this point, it's been back and forth, adding the plate and taking it off and marking holes and drilling and adding again and cleaning stuff, and then adding again. After all this holes are drilled correctly, then it's possible to finally start assembling the camera again. Because now then it would be possible to add the missing parts. Yeah, but removing the plate and drilling the last of the holes, I think I will make the third part of the video at that point. So removing this and drilling the last of the holes, and then continuing with starting to finally installing the motor to the camera and testing it. Part 3.